But what's another good, like, film-based analogy? Maybe they're going to start the hero's journey here. Maybe this is their inciting incident, being 0-2 down and having to beat back the tide.
Is this the Act 3 where the hero finally gets to come back and
darkest before the dawn.
Save the day, where Simba finally becomes a full-grown adult male lion and all that jizz.
And becomes so much more expressive.
Something like that was oddly topical. Talon,
thank you.
Speaking of topical, it's somber on both sides. Green leaves. Ryan goes 3-2-1. See how they go on that first rotation.
Well, the answer is poorly. That has been a very nice biotic grenade. They do survive it. Cloud takes a lot of pressure. Actually, good catch on Bashful. By the way,
it's going very well now.
Bashful's in right now over a Pudo.
So that's 6v5. All members survive. All members will eventually make it on top of the point. And Talon actually have to be the ones waiting for respawners here.
Oh, big charge from Scenario. Finds Muse. It does cost him his own life, but they have the closer respawns, and Gagora taking a lot of pressure eventually goes down as well. So Green Leaves end up having what is ultimately a successful first push onto the point and should be able to cap off this.
And this is where, okay, Green Leaves, if they weren't able to fully successfully rotate around the point, if they lost a member, it was 5v5, this is still a winnable state for Talon, but because Talon are waiting for a member, they have to play 5v6, Muse then gets picked out, Gagora to follow, they just never quite have enough members to properly contest and very rapidly lose A because of it.
That's the thing. Talon do at least get the opportunity to take this very forward defense here. This is relatively standard right now, and both teams just playing mirror compositions, so let's see if they can anchor a defense somewhere here, maybe.
And we'll see how long Green Leaves keep this up, because over the past two maps, there have been some shining moments. However, those have been far and few in between. Can this continue for them? Muse says no.
Yeah, because he's the one who's shining right now, all juiced up on Nano Boost, and don't do drugs, kids. Yoshimi does go down, but it ends up being traded out with Muse, who was pretty handily slept there, so this is actually a point upon which Green Leaves can hang an offense. Nice EMP, though, out from Patapan. Immediately puts a dampener on that thought, and it ends up Talon are going to end up the better end of that fight.
And whether it was intentional or not, but Patapan actually got the three members, the only three members that actually had an ultimate to use. 10, Scenario, and 50 were the ones caught by the EMP, so no chance for Green Leaves to counter-ult of any sort. Talon now in a position to continue holding. They have Earthshatter, they have Grab. They just have to keep Bashful alive, who was sleeping.
So this is indeed going to be where Talon can start it's a really weird shatter from Muse, unfortunately, but they do still have a grab. Gagora has to make the wraparound play to make it happen, though, so just a bit of ground made here from Green Leaves, who actually commit their grab at the same time, so both teams are just going to kind of stare at each other for a bit. Nice EMP out, though, from 50 is going to tip the balance here as Talon starts to get picked off, and that was with Green Leaves already starting to force Talon off the cart prior to this fight, so this is reasonable momentum regained for them, rather.
And it's good news that Green Leaves, okay, first they get a 6-man EMP and then they win the fight anyway, but when you see the Earthshatters come through, you would like to also see a bit of patience from Scenario, because usually it's the EMP Shatter combo that you want to be able to use together to ensure a fight, when I will say again, in this particular scenario, they didn't need that because the EMP was good enough, but still, it was a bit sad to see some of the ultimates flown out for no reason. Scenario now is about to get another one back in. Ooh. Nice kill into Patapan means Green Leaves 6v5.
Yeah, this is Green Leaves preserving a ton of momentum through streets here. Talon should still be able to regroup before the cap comes through, though. Oh, nice stun on Yoshimi. That should be
even up the numbers.
Yoshimi able to stay alive, actually, and it's just going to be both teams inevitably committing a lot to this fight, I imagine. The Nano Boost, unfortunately, hasn't got a lot done, though, for Green Leaves, but same can be said of Talon here.
I mean, that's two ultimates that Talon have now expended. Patapan's going to have an EMP soon. Xerapi should be looking to counter this one.
Well, he doesn't have it anymore because he committed it, and Scenario dies before the sound barrier can come in, but it gets traded out with Muse once again, so still not a bad situation necessarily for Green Leaves. They will be hurting for the lack of shadow, but Talon still need to find a way to rally.
And I think CQB might be forced to use this early, or not anymore. They have player ad.
Mango Jai working double time, trying to keep everyone topped off, and Green Leaves have decided they're not going to try and force this one out. They're going to make the more conservative move and just back off before they lose anyone else.
And honestly, they have the right ults. This time they can actually use EMP Shatter combo, and even if the sound barrier comes through, that's a lot of abilities that they can really get advantage from, and they, you know, sound barrier might save a few members, but you probably are going to get a player advantage off it, so Talon probably get to escape for now.
There it is, nicely placed. Gagora still got the grab out just from being a bit preemptive, but it hasn't really slowed down Green Leaves. In fact, Gagora's the only casualty of this fight so far. Now Talon have had to use that sound barrier. They do keep some members in the fight, but as soon as it runs out, they just get absolutely drilled down. Green Leaves looking good here. They came in with the right ultimates. They've executed very well. They're going to be rewarded with a cap on B.
And this has been, I would say, the most success they've had in a row so far during a map or during any phase of the game where, as mentioned earlier on, they have very small bits of success where they look pretty good, then they don't look very good at all for a long time, and then they'll look a little bit better towards some other part of the map. Right now, they've gone through A, they've gone through B. Talon Esports, we're still looking for the stability. At what point do they say, okay, this is now where the defense is going to be solid? C is probably likely where that's going to happen, but in terms of even ults, they haven't had the best connection, they haven't had the best execution so far in Hollywood.
A hack on Patapan could have potentially been quite punishing there. Talon is just going to have to start leading into this. That's a nice shatter as well. Really hampers what Muse can do, all with that nano boost up, and again the EMP as well. But because most of the team was shattered, Green Leaves can back out without losing anyone, and suddenly Talon don't have much left to go on.
And that's the second time in a row that the nano boost goes onto Muse and instantly Green Leaves self-peel themselves away and just nullify the effects of the nano boost. It's like it didn't even happen. We have to see now if Muse can do something with the Earth Shadow without any help from the EMP.
And that's all they've got to work with, which is really saying something. Talon are already taking so much pressure, tries to get the shatter through, but it goes straight to Sonaro's shields. Muse gets charged
Big
down.
punish.
So Green Leaves, just brilliant read of the situation in this extended fight, backing off of the cart, pushing back on, and once again, they've preserved a lot of overall momentum.
And that couldn't have gone worse for Muse. He throws the shatter into the shield and instantly gets charged by Sonaro and cleaned up. So Green Leaves now maintaining a bit more momentum going through. They've barely been stopped up on the offense. They have EMP available, grab as well. You'd like to imagine, based off resource, they can win.
That is a good catch on 50, though. That is an EMP that Green Leaves are going to wish they had here. Grab comes out from 10, so they're still committing to this fight. Muse staying alive for so long, though. Same with Bashful. He's going to inevitably get this rally off, and then another nano boost. This one is enough to finish off Sonaro. Now the charge in won't find anyone in its own right, but Green Leaves are massively on the retreat here.
And that's a big fight win for Talon. I can't really believe I'm saying it, but so far that's probably been their best fight win in this entire defense. So for Green Leaves, a really unfortunate one where 50 goes down early, so that's an EMP. They don't get to commit into the fight, which would have been big. It's an Earth Shadow as well. They don't get to combo into that fight. It's a Graviton Surge they have to use after Gagora already committed and start to get advantage from. And Green Leaves do not get any counter trades. They get nothing out of these ults. And now we're finally down to under 1 minute. This is where the time pressure may actually cost them.
It's the incredible thing. Green Leaves haven't lost a lot of fights. They've just had to play cautious. That's a really good EMP, though. Much better than Patapan's.
Where the kills, though.
Rewarded with the kill on Muse. It's only the one so far, and Green Leaves are still actually having a bit of trouble approaching the cart. The Shatter's nice, though, even if it only finds the one. But the sound barrier prevents the kill from coming in too quick. They find Patapan and Bashful, though. Green Leaves, they have managed to get back onto this one, back on the forward push. Very limited for time, but looking like they will be able to cap out here and not in overtime either.
It's super stagnant spawns. You need to see Muse and Gagora use these ultimates, but they're only just spawning now.
And Gagora's not going to be able to get there in time. I do find it quite incredible, though, that still came down to such a low time because it felt like Green Leaves were mostly winning fights, but like I said, had to play cautious, often had to back up so that Talon didn't get value out of their own ultimates and Green Leaves could come back in with a better fight. And that ended up wasting a lot of time. But they do cap out, and again, not in overtime, which means at this rate of Talon cap, we at least go to time bank.
So, didn't mention that, okay, Green Leaves are winning more fights, more consistently, however, not necessarily in a row, so they'll be winning a fight, losing one, then winning the next one, and every time they do, and they'll get the cart positioning up ever so slightly, and because they're still losing some engagements in the middle, but that is costing them a decent amount, that is costing them time to get resources up and running, get their ult economy flowing again, they have to get past some of these very successful Talon defenses at certain points, and Talon have had the least consistent fight wins over the course of the defense on Hollywood so far, but because they've had some, they still managed to really take that 8-minute timer down to just 14, and even towards the end there, you can imagine a world where Talon are not split spawning, they have members that can reset properly, Gagora and Muse get to use their ultimates, they get to put the nano boost back onto Muse where it does more, and that's the other thing is nano boost on Muse was very uneventful so far for Talon in this defense. And not a lot went right for Talon, a lot more went right for Green Leaves, and yet we don't know if they can win just yet. They had a great offense that now needs to be translated into a great defense.
The reality is, if Talon get a good enough offense, then they could just go in with a massive time bank. At that point, it's hard enough for Green Leaves to turn things back around, so it really will be more, can Green Leaves have a good defense here? They're not going to win just through getting a better time bank, I imagine.
And I feel bad about Green Leaves, but I'm not ready to buy their stock just yet because it does feel like Temple of Anubis where eventually they got A, eventually they got a decent amount on B, but then they got rolled once we swap sides. Does that happen again? Can Talon roll, or is this going to be very difficult for Talon?
Well, they've already decided they don't quite want to run this composition. Going to go back to spawn, make some changes. Mango Jai aids some pressure on that rotation, but he gets back alive.
They're going to be matching, at least in terms of the Orisa so far. What do we got here? Hog on the lineup. Talon, not quite decided. Muse and Gora both kind of changing here. Now they're swapping onto a bit more of a dive. Still looking to see how they might want to handle Hashimi. It doesn't feel like they've yet fully decided. More members going back to spawn.
Like nearly a minute, 45 seconds they've spent, and in the end they just sort of come out on this.
It's Winston Goats with a Sombra. It doesn't feel too special. Feels very defensive, actually. They're going to be relying on getting this first rotation out, and then successfully maybe applying point pressure.
Oh,
not.
Very quick
Okay.
charge in there from Muse. Sort of faked out on the rotation, ends up moving in to this cafe, and it has forced Green Leaves to make the counter rotation.
They still got to deal with the spam. How are you supposed to kill Hashimi? How do you stop him from just destroying your team? There's a lot of questions. Lot rides on Panapan to get this EMP to maybe shut down the aerial force.
What they have at least done is put pressure on the points. They are rewarded with a third so far, and eventually Green Leaves themselves have to get on top of this, but the spam damage should, in theory, take care of that, especially when they start getting ultimates up. Nearly out of Dragon Strike.
It's a big kill, though.
Find Xerafi, that's big. 50 under a lot of pressure as well, as to back out of this. 10 goes down, just shy of a Dragon Strike, and suddenly, when it just seems like Green Leaves are right on the cusp of being able to push Talon right off, and Talon are barely in it, they just start fragging out.
The timing could not be more precise. The actual kills they got could not have been better. Xerafi was the keystone in the bridge, and as soon as that one's been removed, the entire thing collapses, and Green Leaves stuck in the water here, flowing downstream. And 50's the only one that gets to keep his ultimate from that previous defense, the Sombra, available to EMP. Kind of feels like when they were running CV on the opening map of Busan, and now, after this complete swap-up, Talon are in the lead for ult economy.
Matapan's kept such a good handle on this rotation. His presence and actually being detected a couple of times has ended up forcing Green Leaves to slow down. And now Green Leaves are in this really awkward spot. They're kind of half and half on this one. The coalescence is going to keep these members nice and healthy for Talon. And I mean, Green Leaves got absolutely made a fool of in that entire passage of play there.
And by the way, now Mango Jai gets to swap. He uses the ultimate, gets to take a victory with it. Coalescence gone. Expecting either an Ana or a Zenyatta here. Probably Ana, to be honest, because there is 50 on the Sombra. Green Leaves, out of all of that, get themselves a nano boost. Still hold on to the same EMP. Halfway on Sonara and 10, just about. So not all lost, but realistically, Talon didn't spend that much. They still have their own EMP, which is a big deal.
This is a very good spot for Talon to be in, all things considered. They nearly have a sound barrier as well, so if CQB gets that, then suddenly even 50 isn't as much as a threat.
It's a one-man EMP.
Just onto Mango Jai, but who cares about that when Gagora gets a 3K and... I mean,
boy. He's tunnel vision on this end. He's like, okay, if this is not an Ana, this is a Zen, I'm going to get a nice
He's
snack.
like, I got it, guys.
Got a really tasty snack over here. It's just a 100 HP Zen post-EMP. Guess what? Gagora gets a 3K on the self-destruct, and Green Leaves already on C. 4 minutes, 27 remaining. You got to feel this is going to time bank, and Talon are going to have a lot of time.
And look, even if Gagora hadn't got the 3K, I would have still favored Talon on the front part of that fight, because Green Leaves still weren't really ready for a commit. All they had was the EMP, and it only went on to one person. Outside of that, Talon just had more to work with regardless, so preserving a reasonable amount of momentum coming into C rather, even with the swaps now is Talon.
We're going to see what they can do with only a sound barrier, because this is time for Green Leaves to strike back. This is now where they can put their feet in the ground, really dig in, use the Earth Shatter, have a Graviton Surge. This is where they can get this ult economy rolling. Finally on the defense and waste a lot of the attacking time.
Sonara coming up on this Shatter could be very impactful, though, if he can land that. And he does at least land it on a couple of members, but not members that they can access, unfortunately. The sound barrier now slows things down even more for Green Leaves, who...
He's got to live.
Also lost 10, who had a grab. Now 50 throws out his Dragon Strike, but it doesn't do much. Talon are playing further forward than that cart, and they're just out-fragging once again. The grab comes in, but the cap comes in simultaneously, and I don't even know where that grab was.
The pressure was too much. The point pressure on there, the objective that Talon were consistently on top of, that Green Leaves, at the end of the day, kind of ignored the fact that they weren't on there as the cart went over. They had the grab available. Dragon Strike did very little, as you mentioned, to stop that push from coming in. Sound barrier was used by Xerafi, but note that they lost 2 tags by the time that happened, so timing on getting that ult up in time was just a little bit too slow. Only one member got caught by Sonaro's Earth Shatter as well.
Compare and contrast that EMP and self-destruct, by the way. That was the same fight where 50 committed his onto just the Zenyatta.
And the other thing is, you know the self-destruct is coming through because you saw the thing flying in the air, you heard the voice line, you can see the cart being pushed through as well. You know that Talon are playing quite aggressively here. I think for them, there was going to be a very difficult place for them to play anyway, because this is now, if you do have an EMP, which 50 does, you don't necessarily want to be playing it into EMP because you want to be pushing into your EMP, which you can't do if a self-destruct is in the air. So likely they have to wait out the self-destruct, block it out with damage, or block it out with a shield rather, which doesn't then happen because the EMP comes through. You can see all the members that would have survived unfortunately get blown up. And this is where, if you do survive against the self-destruct and then you put your own EMP on top of the team fight on the cart, not on a solo Zen, that's when Green Leaves can actually win that defense. However, as we can see, that's not how it transpired. So, question somewhat answered. Green Leaves, yeah, kind of got rolled on that defense.
A little unfortunate to say. 4:14 on the clock for Talon, but first Green Leaves get there, go around.
Get 1 minute.
Now only 40 seconds of that minute remaining. They were able to do this in one concerted push, but this is a really nice commit by Talon, but it could blow up in their faces. So far it is a 1-for-1 with Green Leaves having a closer respawn, and Talon, they're well committed to this fight now. They just have to keep it up.
So the big news here is that Green Leaves actually lost a member on rotation, which didn't happen last time. They do have a big player ad now, so they can still cap.
Yeah, that was a huge bio grenade from Cloud as well, and I mean, it does mean that inevitably Talon can't keep committing to this fight. Again, I like the play by Talon. I think it's the right call. You maybe win that fight in the rotation, and there's no cap that comes through at all. Even if you lose it, the cap will come through. Green Leaves will get this one in overtime, and then you can just take an early fight in the streets phase.
In some ways, though, I would like to see Talon be a little bit more reserved in that, okay, we are going to try and intercept this rotation here, however, don't want to commit too hard. Speaking of committing, though, they are going to try and defend A again.
I don't know how I feel about that. Patapan already demech'd here and now dead. It's not like Talon are really exerting much pressure. They don't have the ultimates to back it up, and Green Leaves, they have a lot more to play with. That's a nice shatter, though, out from Muse. The counter is there, and inevitably they get nothing for it. So again, a nano boost and a self-destruct comes to no effect here for Talon. They do drain Green Leaves dry, though, but they're going to take the streets face fight a lot further down the line than they otherwise might have.
By the way, I would consider this to be unsuccessful for Talon had that EMP not come through and Green Leaves committing everything they had, EMP into shatter. Okay, now that's been a successful somewhat retake from Talon where they don't defend A, but like you mentioned, successfully dry out all the ultimates minus the sound barrier coming up online for Xerafi. Green Leaves now don't have a lot of momentum pushing through, except for the fact that they won the last fight, but no ults to show for it.
What they're really relying on is Gogora connecting this grab. Xerafi will have a sound barrier for it, but
grab bomb combo.
Squeeze some kills through, and that's the thing. The self-destruct could be part of that, and there it gets thrown out. They need to set this up. Doesn't end up getting anything, and Patapan's dead, and they're off the card.
Boop them all off.
Yep, call it a big brain play from Talon, I would say, because that's also the crowd control aspect of the grab, and probably a factor Green Leaves hadn't really thought about either, so inevitably Talon end up playing to the objective more than the fight, and it pays off for them.
And this, by the way, this is a recovery for Talon after, I would say now 2 in a row, uneventful, really disappointing A-point defenses where they try and get fairly aggressive. Unfortunately, are not disciplined enough to pull back when Muse is too deep in trouble, or in the case of the original push, they lost their Brigadier very quickly as well. So they're always down one. At least this time around, yes, they do trade out. They get Sonaira on the other end, but that's it. They don't get any more kills. And eventually, you see more on the Green Leaf side. What I do find quite interesting is the decision then to go for the retake instead of going for the early point B defense. Now, looking at that in hindsight, you can see why they did that, why it's genius, because they got all the ultimates out of Green Leaves, and if you're in a time bank overtime push, which they were, you need ult economy. You need to have a lot of that momentum pushing you through, because that's what momentum really is at the end of the day. It's not just players. Where are the resources? What can you do? Because they are nothing, they only lose one fight on B, the entire push is over.
And look, it feels like it worked, but also that maybe it shouldn't have. At any rate, when it's, you know, what's done is done, and it did work, and it actually worked well enough that honestly, with over 4 minutes to go here, they should still win.
I'll be honest, to close the book on that, if they had taken the early fight on B, it would have been more of a 50-50 toss-up, because both teams would have ultimates. So yeah, going into this push though, they got 4 minutes to get past A and a little bit on B. You gotta say it's very doable.
And Scenario is already dead. 10 as well.
More than doable now.
Quick commit here from Talon, and A lot of that comes down to CQB actually dislodging some people from that high ground, so just excellently done here. Greenleaves will get that early fight on B, and they're going to need it because that is all they have left of this map to actually stop Talon from just winning the series altogether.
Some teams like to set up, rotate around the point, go up to the cafe. Talon this time around, just walk right on top of the point, walk past Scenario, walk past 10, like a bulldoze, just smashing everything out of the way. And now 3 minutes 20 to make the impossible defense happen. Remember, match point now. Talon, this could be the 3-0. Greenleaves are in a really tough spot.
And I'm going to level with you.
Even tougher.
I don't see Greenleaves winning this, especially not with Xerapi dead. Scenario as well, and Talon, they just don't stop, really. They just keep the pressure on. Nice stall here by 50, but it is only that. It is a stall. There is no time for them to respawn and come back to this one. Eventually, it's just going to be bodies on the cart like in a zombie apocalypse. It's just bodies piling up, and eventually they'll overwhelm you.
Yeah, well, this is
analogy quite stuck there, but at any rate, Talon are going to get it over the line. Talon are going to get 3 maps out of 4, and now the only question that remains is will they get another 4-0?
To add on top of the analogy, this is what it looks like when all the survivors get into a doomsday truck, where it's got, like, you know, all the weapons on the sides and, like, this big shovel thing at the front, and they just plow through everything, like, unimpeded. It's just incredible. That's what that looks like. And what it really shows is, I think Talon got a lot of work to do on that Hollywood defense. For some reason, okay, A's been a disaster twice. B and C were somewhat competitive, but somewhat competitive for a team that is looking to go 28-0 is really not where you want to be. 4 and 5 is not really where you want to be in terms of dominating the rest of the competition here. What we can say is, in terms of domination, look at Talon's attack. It was completely one-sided. We talk about, okay, you see some glimmers of hope for Greenleaves, and this was true on various other maps as well, but at some stage, it gets so one-sided. You swap sides, or you go to another round of Busan or whatever you want here, and then suddenly, it's Talon's offense, and it's a completely different matchup. You feel like you're watching 2 different teams again.
And what I will say, I mean, even just in terms of the defenses, you compare that to the defense on Temple of Anubis, is honestly on Hollywood, it just looked way less ironclad here for Talon. It felt, you know, maybe even undisciplined in some areas. It's hard to say these things because they do still walk away with the win. But that's the thing, is it's not clean. You'll also give Greenleaf some credit there, is, you know, it was a good enough offense that lack of cleanliness ultimately gets punished, but not in as much as it loses them the series. So, look, on the whole, it works for Talon. What I will say, and I don't want to get too sort of off course with this, is we were talking at the start of the night about, you know, a dominant team in a region and being a big fish in a small pond, and if you don't get challenged properly, then you don't end up succeeding when you go beyond that scope. That is one of those maps where it's a bit more alarming because they didn't play the cleanest Overwatch, but ultimately don't get punished for it. So what I want to see now, at least moving forward into Havana, is I want to see a tighter defense from Talon. I don't want to see them getting away with mistakes, because eventually those mistakes will become habits.
So what you see on the offense and how dominant that was, that's what you expect of Talon. That's how Talon should be across this map. Not to sort of take anything away from Greenleaves, but it's quite staggering when the 2 different sides of the attack and offense, when you swap sides, how different both teams look. Because we also mentioned, okay, decent offense from the side of Greenleaves. They actually finished the map, and we started to talk about, okay, how does this translate now into a defense? They looked okay on offense, so they can do that again and do that again on defense. They can actually win this map, where they can really push this one very far. But it was just completely different. It was so ridiculously one-sided once we've actually swapped sides that it just doesn't quite make sense for both teams, I would argue. So something to certainly look at, I would say, for both ends.
Absolutely. It's something you would be more harsh on Talon about. It's almost like, you know, when you're telling someone off because they should know better. And on the side of Greenleaves, it's like, well, you did your best, buddy, and, you know, maybe work on this. So that is the other difference at play here. And what I will also say, to throw Greenleaves a bone, is we did say, as much as this is having moved the goalposts a long way forward, it's, you know, a relatively competitive performance is still a good performance, at least for one's future in the rest of this tournament, because Talon aren't the only team here. Greenleaves will play someone else next week, and they want to continue what has been otherwise a fairly successful season for them.
And by the way, when you move Talon's goalpost really far down the pitch, you're moving everyone else's goalpost very far forward. And that looks like now 1 map for Greenleaves. Can we get 1 map win for Greenleaves here? 1 more opportunity left to try and get that one. It will be on our final game mode of the day, Escort. So let's go ahead and learn a bit more about that.
Welcome to Watchpoint Gibraltar. This is Escort. 2 teams face off as either defenders or attackers. This is the payload. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to escort the payload along a set path containing 3 checkpoints. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby at the same time. To get moving again, attackers must clear away the defenders by force. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. If even one attacker is near the payload when the clock runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared off the payload or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
Number 4 coming up here is going to be Havana, as teased a little bit earlier. And I do want to say for this map in particular, 2 things can often happen here. It may still be new enough that perhaps Talon are not fully prepared on it yet. This is, we're kind of like really clutching for straws in a way saying this. But the other side is maybe Green Leaves may not be prepared enough for this because it's also new enough that if a team is good, you can just absolutely dominate a team. And let's cast our minds back. The last time we saw Talon play Havana, they set one of the fastest Havana times I've seen ever. And on a map that you often don't fully cap out.
And compare that to Green Leaves. Last time we saw them on Havana, if I recall correctly, it unfortunately wasn't the most successful. So you kind of see both sides of that coin being at play here, right? And this is a map where I think a lot of teams still make what are quite major mistakes that are born of unfamiliarity, things that are different in how you might approach Havana compared to other escort maps. Like, to give an example, a classic one is taking a lot of the very advanced defenses for point A. We see a lot of teams know that that's the thing to do and have an idea of how to do it, but ultimately fail when it comes to the actual execution of that game plan. So Talon isn't one of those teams. I don't think Green Leaves really are, but there's always room for mistakes. Look at that pigeon.
You can see there, that is how the zombie virus is spread, to be a pigeon. So
that makes sense. That is why there's no people, because they all died to the zombie apocalypse. You've figured out Overwatch.
Speaking of dying, let's see what Green Leaves can do in terms of damage here. They are now playing Spam. They have Bastion. Woo! Still get a kill to Patty, though. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's just the right composition to deal with what Talon's trying to do. They've got some members out of the base gates. Eventually, the spam damage will kill someone, and the defenders have to back away from that spot.
And because the fight goes quickly enough, you're not really giving away too many ults here. Look, you can see on both sides. Yeah, okay, 50's reset on the Sombra at 1%, but look, Panapan's reset as well. Talon don't have much to work with. Your cards in your possession. Green Leaves, once again, so far, 4 out of 4 maps. The early stages for them actually look good.
Here is one quirk, though, because Patapan is swapping to the Diva. They obviously want the goats. Usually you'd put Gogora on that and Patapan on the Zarya, so instead you've got something a little bit wonkier for Talon.
Well, Gogora started on the Zarya, right? So that's what they got to stick with, and Green Leaves now. See what they can do, because this is a neutral. Muse goes down early. Yeah,
that's a really nice commit there for Green Leaves. They sort of bait Talon forward just a little bit too far and then push in. And now they're going to be rewarded with finding Patapan as well. And ultimately, they've kept pretty good momentum through here.
And by the way, it's not too uncommon, Talon. In Hollywood, we did see a bit of this as well. Patapan was playing the Diva eventually. So Green Leaves now winning a couple of fights in a row. It is a little bit weird, but now EMP will be coming online soon. Rally to follow. Rally actually coming up first. Talon haven't quite put their foot down on defense yet. Gogora nearly on grab.
And it's probably going to be the grab that will be the beginning of them putting their foot down on the defense. Cloud has a Transcendence, though, to answer it. So it's still going to be advantage Green Leaves here. Tempo Transcendence actually from Cloud, and Gogora is going to be smiling to have seen that. Now he commits his grab in, and there's no real good way to stop it. The Earth Shatter from Sonairo not going to be enough to stop the engage. That is a full team wipe.
And this is where you wanted to see the EMP as well. EMP into Shatter, that would have been a successful play for them. But the fact that Green Leaves unfortunately ate everything, Gogora's one grab so successful, you alluded to this, but Transcendence being used by Cloud is an instant go button for Gogora once the Transcendence is gone. And now Talon have very quickly put their foot into the ground and said, this is where we're going to lose, this is where we're going to burn a lot of time off the clock. And for Greenleaves, they can get that time back, but the EMP needs to be good.
Better yet, what they kind of need to do is between the EMP and the grab that Ten is about to have, they need to get Mango Jai's Transcendence off the table, like what Talon just did with Cloud. But that's really going to put a dampener on that as Scenario just goes down. That's also the sound barrier used up, and Greenleaves do have those offensive tools now, but they're ending up having to take a retreat here until Scenario respawns.
And this is now going to give CQB the opportunity to get the sound barrier. So we talk about, okay, get this Transcendence out. Now you can get the Transcendence out, and there's going to be a second support ult to back them up. So unfortunately for Greenleaves, a window is very rapidly closing off the back of one nice self-destruct combo kill. Apudo got the shield bash on there as well.
There's the first one, the grab. It's going to be the Transcendence to deal with that. Now the EMP actually finds CQB. That's a smart way to layer the ultimates, actually. You commit it while CQB is still in the grab, where you're guaranteed to catch him. He can't hide. So Greenleaves end up outplaying where those two supports were positioned, get the better end of the engage. 30 seconds left, they should be capping A.
Better yet, they got EMP into Bionade because Patapan was caught in there as well, couldn't DM it. Cloud now doing a decent amount of work. Here comes that sound barrier.
Yeah, Talon decide they're not done with this. They've been able to rally and regroup here. Nice grab to catch these members of Greenleaves, and there's no good way to counter it. Shatter out now from Muse, completely opened up. There is Greenleaves. And that's going to be the one that tips the balance here now with less than 10 seconds left. I actually don't think Greenleaves are going to end up capping this at all. Talon have been able to create the defense, the full defense, and a lead EMP for star points from 50.
You see this play from Talon where the decision-making say, we will go for this fight. We will go for the last-minute contest. Talked about this on Hollywood on that time bank saying, could it have been risky? Possibly. But in terms of playing the numbers game here, mentioned that it was probably going to be more risky to not make this play. But these are difficult decisions to make because if you do this poorly, you're going to give the opposing team, the attacking team in this case, so much momentum, so many ults, so much, free cart push to work with, losing your own positioning on B. Think about what would have happened if they actually lose this fight. The high ground, the early bridge locations, so heavily sought after by both teams, would have been taken easily by Greenleaves. It would have been poor for Talon. However, their ability to read when to take these engagements to say, we are confident that we can come back and we have the right abilities, we can land this big shatter, and the card is not going to go over A, we're not going to even go to B. For them to see this play quickly in the matter of a few seconds, then execute on it properly as was designed, that's a big deal because for Greenleaves, you would have expected this to be a cap.
That's Talon for you, I suppose. So, all the things we may have criticized them for on Hollywood, some of the issues with the defense, they're still as eager to commit to the fights this time around, but the execution is cleaner. They are far more successful. They also properly played that forward defense as well. The point of taking it is, yes, you may still lose it, but it gives you an opportunity to defend further back. So they retreated effectively from it, and it ends up being in that second location. They complete a hold, and now only have to get it to the end of this opening section to complete another 4-0.
Let me tell you about the story about 3 pigeons and a horse holding this defense right now. There's the bunker composition. Greenleaves, 10's going to get the opening kill on the Patapan.
Nicely done, and I'm not quite familiar with the 3 pigeons and a horse reference.
Arissa's the horse.
Who were the pigeons?
There was 3 pigeons down there. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Scroll back.
I drank my tea. I couldn't tell.
That's fine.
Wasn't paying attention. I was paying attention to the delicious taste of raspberry leaf. It's like green tea, only way more extra.
Oh, that was so boring. Gagora was asleep. Tell him now. See what else they can do on this push.
I mean, I should be offended, but actually that was genuinely funny. And already Talon have done the bulk of the groundwork. Greenleaves don't slow down Talon too much on this opening street push, that sort of narrower firing line.
Honestly, the bunkers kind of failed in a way already because with the cart positions already pushed up, bunkers on the ground now. If you're the GOAT team, or rather Talon just playing whatever this is, you can just kind of push into them.
The reality is Greenleaves, I was about to say, haven't really had the picks and they aren't close enough to ultimates, even in finding Patapan, because Talon are flexing onto the Mercy for the purposes of this composition. They got a res, so even the 1 pick isn't enough. You need to get multiple for this.
Kashimi!
The Kashimi! Out in the open like a sitting duck, or like a mechanical duck, I suppose. Yeah. Gonna be making mincemeat of him one way or another. Does get res, but in the time it takes for that to happen, the rest of Greenleaves are cut down. And that's why they call them Greenleaves, I suppose. It's like a lawn, you just mow them over, and Talon That's another 4-0 on the books. Now 20 maps on their way to the 28 map series. Or season,
8 more.
rather.
8 more to go for Talon to get that full, perfect regular season. You know, why stop there? Why not just then go through playoffs?
Yeah.
Go undefeated there. So what do you need?
I mean, if they
3
do
in the
that,
semis, 4 in the finals.
If
So
they do that, I'll send them a bottle of champagne because they've earned it.
better yet, you deliver it to them personally. 35-0 would be what they can finish the entire season on. And look, are we getting too far ahead of ourselves? Maybe. But at the same time, who's supposed to beat them? They've only got Nova MS left to play that can really contest them because Jupiter's coming up next. And without, no offense, but Jupiter's number 8 versus number 1, that's not going to be the one map that Talon lose, unfortunately.
You know what?
So, I mean, Nova, they've struggled. Nova lost to Green Leaves, so who's taking a map off of Talon? I can't see anyone doing it.
You know what? I will actually take up on that. If Talon do have an undefeated season, they don't even drop a map in playoffs, I will hand deliver. I will hand deliver a bottle of champagne, a stainless steel bottle of champagne.
Ooh.
And if you don't believe me that I'm going to do that, well, knock, knock, open up the door, it's real. Got the non-stop pop, pop with stainless steel.
And how many of those words rhymed? A few. Got a couple of them in
Pixie, go and give it to you. Stuff waiting for you to get it on your own. Pixie's going to deliver to you.
Oh, please. Oh, boy. That was good. I actually enjoyed that. Well, a few times. It's rare for me.
Yeah, you're a very tough person.
I don't know.
Tough crowd.
It is. Tough one to crack. I don't know what else to add to that. That was pretty decent.
Me neither, so I'm going to force you to talk by sipping my tea.
Well, what I can say is, look, Green Leaves, is it all disaster? Is it all nightmare for them? I think on Havana, that was the outlier because Busan, okay, took a round. Hollywood took us a time bank. Temple of Anubis got us to the B. Like, it's Temple of Anubis, maybe you make not as much of an argument for, but still, at various points on the first 3 maps, you see some good moments from on Havana. That looked too one-sided. This time around, there was no Talon just failed this defense. We go through all these different points and Talon finally wake up somewhere, or we go to time bank. This time it's just Talon actually, successfully fighting a defense. And sure, there were some good fights there for Green Leaves getting towards the end of B. But we got to talk about that ultimate fight towards the end where Talon's just like, you know what, we're going to win this one. We have read the situation, being that if we go for the retake, we take this one. They get it. They play their offense clean. They win.
There was kind of just no magic left, I think, for Green Leaves. Look, the first 3 maps they lost, but on Havana, they looked genuinely defeated. There's actually no joke there. This is me really providing some insight. So when all said and done, like I said, Green Leaves ultimately looked defeated, and Talon, they just continue the dominance.
They do 20-0 now going into week 5, completing week 5 for them anyway. For the rest of them, though, for the rest of the teams, week 5 does continue. Still got an exciting match coming up. Cyclone Coupling versus Jupiter looking for their first victory. Who's going to come out on top? You're going to have to find out right after this break.